I'm finally back to teaching a new course, and I really think this is going to be the most important course I've ever taught. The last time I said that was about 3 years ago when I taught the last Logitati of Ashta's course, and it was the most important course I'd ever taught up to that point. But the last 3 years have just been this accelerated learning process, which is a lot of the reason I haven't been teaching a lot. I've sort of disappeared. I've disappeared into a really, interesting and yet insane world. And it's been really amazing. And the results of the last 3 years, I'm boiling down into this course, which is, yes, a more important, more useful, and simpler course than the last Logitati of Ashta's class. This is a very serious course. I expect everyone who takes this course is going to have a lot of transformation. The people who actually learn the material well in this course are going to find their readings transforming other people's lives. Even if you're not reading horoscopes, but you just have an interest in studying for yourself, the knowledge you're going to get in this course is going to give you insights about everyone you're dealing with. You're going to be able to manage everything better with everyone you dealt with, even if you don't have their horoscope. Okay, you're just going to learn a tremendous amount of important things. And all these things we're going to learn, we're going to relate to the horoscope so that you can do it all astrologically. Okay? So, the class is called the course, it's going to be a hefty course, is PAC in astrology. Now, what is PAC? PAC is parent, adult, child. And it's this idea that psychologists have developed that each of us has a parent, an adult, and a child living within us. Okay? And this is not something that's been covered in any of the old Vedic astrology books. In the old Vedic astrology books, we've got the king and the queen by the sun and moon, the general Mars, the two ministers, or priests, whatever you want to call them, Jupiter and Venus, the crown prince, which is Mercury, and then we have the servant, which is Saturn. So in the old books, we're given this arrangement of planets in respect to the kingdom. And yes, we all have a kingdom within ourselves. Okay? But the reality is, and that kingdom, I've talked about that kingdom extensively in lots of courses. Having all those planets working together in our kingdom is important. If you've got a sloppy servant, everyone's going to die of sickness, right? If you've got a drunk king, the kingdom is going to fall into despair. So all those are really important for dealing with our lives, our entirety of our lives. Okay? What I'm talking about, the parent, adult, children parts of ourselves, which are also astrologically identifiable, are actually more important in many respects because it has to do with our relationships more. Every relationship is a parent-adult-child relationship of some sort. And most of our problems, the things that really hurt us, are interpersonal relationship problems, which means problems with the people we're close to, problems with the people we want to connect to. Okay? That's where most of our pain is coming. Yes, it sucks to lose your job. It sucks to have a drunk king and not be making enough money and stuff like that. But the severity of the pain and the trouble it causes the person isn't as severe as these relationship problems we have. And I mean, by relationship problems, I mean any relationship you have with people. And when we look at the astrology, your psyche, and the planets in the context of the parent, adult, and children, it gives us this really amazing framework to help us work on and heal all those relationships, starting with why are those relationships not working in the first place. Okay? The other reason this is a really important way to look at our, ourselves and others and our astrology is that we ourselves have this relationship. We have these three beings in ourselves, a parent, an adult, and a child. Okay? And these three beings are not always getting along. Okay? Imagine married with children, where everyone's in their own chaotic state, stepping on everyone's toes, and doors are getting slammed. That's what a lot of people's internal families like. You got the kids screaming for attention. You got dad checking out or dad telling you what to do, and it's not even relevant to what the teenager is going through in life. And then there's one person trying to hold it all together, pulling their hair out, and doesn't know how to manage all these crazy people around them. So imagine the most dysfunctional family you can think of. Well, if you've experienced any of that life, it's because your internal parent, adult, and children are dysfunctional. They're not working together in a productive way. Okay? And really, if anything's not working in your life, it's because the parent, adult, and child parts are not working in cohesion, especially in respect to your relationships, but really in respect to anything. Okay? So as we look through this and we understand this, you'll see where you're not having the relationship with yourself that's working. Because when we have a relationship with ourselves, that's happening on a lot of dimensions. First, we have our male side of our psyche and our female side of the psyche. And they're going to have a relationship together. That relationship needs to be healthy. Okay? In addition to that, we have a parent, an adult, and a child. Those all need to be working together. And guess what? We have an adult male part and an adult female part. And we have a female child part and a female or male child part. Okay? And we have an adult male part, and we have a parent part and a female parent part. So this gender of I have a male and female half to my psyche applies to our child, adult, and parent as well. Okay? So in this course we will be talking about that too. Okay? So this relationship that these three parts of us are having has a lot to do with how we're feeling. And it has a lot to do with where we're at in life. Okay? And what you're going to learn to understand in this course is going to help you understand where you're at in life, why things are working the way they are, why things are not working the way they are, why you're having problems with people. Okay? And what you need to do to heal all that. Okay? And we're going to get into a lot of very intense principles and things here. This is a really hardcore class that will really go to the core of people's issues, to the core of people's pain. Okay? Along with ways that we can work on it and heal it. One of the beautiful things about astrology, and maybe the most beautiful thing is, with astrology we have a perfect system of psychology, behavior, spiritual development. It's a perfect model. When we look at our planets, we fall short of that model. Okay? The perfect model is every planet exalted, right? Yeah. But the thing is, it's not possible to have every planet exalted astronomically. Because if the sun's exalted in Aries, Mercury and Venus are always close to the sun. So Venus can be exalted, but Mercury can never be exalted if the sun's exalted. So you see, there's actually no way we can have a perfect horoscope where all planets are exalted. Okay? At most, we can have 6 planets exalted. Okay? So, but these concepts of astrology, so no person is a perfect model. But the concepts of astrology are perfect concepts that we can model ourselves after. So in this course, when we identify a problem, okay, something in your life that's not working, now we need to heal it. One way we can heal it is with healthy affirmations, okay, with visualizations. And those affirmations and visualizations can be based on the ideals of the astrology, of the exaltation places, basically, okay? Because really, we're all striving to be at the highest place possible, right? And exaltation is called ucha, which means high. We're trying to get as high as we can, live from our higher selves as much as possible. And so this concept of exaltation and why planets are exalted in certain places, why they're debilitated in certain places, and what that really means to you, and what it really means to your internal psyche, we're going to cover all that. A lot of the things I'm going to explain, I'll explain in the context of, now do you understand why the moon is exalted in Taurus? All these, why is this planet exalted here or there? That's all going to make sense on a very deep psychological level in this course. Okay? And most of us who get into astrology do that because our inner family is somewhat, if not completely, chaotic, right? Okay? Our inner family has some issues and we're looking for answers. The goal of this course is to get everyone to be able to turn their family into their internal family into a healthier, more working family where our different parts are having a healthy relationship with each other. Okay? So, we can have a harmonious or inharmonious inner family. We're going to learn how to identify which of those is by looking at the charts. We're going to learn how to identify that based on observing other people's behaviors, by observing their speech. And so we're going to have two ways to do it. You're just talking to someone and you figure it out, and then you look at their charts and verify it. Okay? We're also, everything we're going to learn in this course, we're also going to teach in the context of analyzing people's handwriting. So at the end of it all, we're going to step right into a handwriting course where all these concepts that you're going to learn to find astrologically, you're going to learn how to find in the handwriting. So now you've got another check. Maybe sometimes it's not so clear in the chart, get their handwriting. Okay? Maybe they don't know their birth time, get their handwriting. Maybe it's the waitress at the bar, right? Just ask her to write something on a napkin. Should you ask her out or run the hell out of the bar, right? We're going to learn how to look for these dynamics that make people have a healthier relationship with their parent, adult, and children, or an unhealthy one. We're going to look at a lot of charts of psychopaths, serial killers. I've done that in the past with Logitatia Avastas and shown how effective and critical really Logitatia Avastas are for looking at serial killers' charts. This system that I'm going to introduce here, which is using Logitatia Avastas, is really going to explain the real roots to these people's dysfunction in society. Okay? As will the handwriting that we're going to look at. So this course is going to take it to another level. The focus of this course is not just astrology. The focus of this course is you, all your problems, all the problems of the people in your life, and healing that and resolving that in any way we can do it. Okay? And astrology is going to be a big part of it, but we're not going to just stick to astrology. We're going to use a lot of astrological concepts. We're going to use the Logitatia Avastas. If you haven't taken the Logitatia Avastas Heart of Parashar course, I recommend that you take it in conjunction with this course. It'll help you. We're going to cover a lot of new stuff about the Logitatia Avastas, but taking that course is going to make you better prepared. Okay? You don't have to take it before, you can take it during if you want. Okay? That's the older Logitatia Avasta course, not the one I did 3 years ago. It's about 5 years old. The concepts in that will be a little more relevant to this course than in the second course, Logitatia course, okay? This is now the third Logitatia Avastas course. And we're going to look at the interpretations of the Logitatia Avastas in a very simple way. Well, I won't be talking an hour about some planet getting starved. It'll be 5 minutes. It'll just be the core of how a person is misusing that to disrupt their inner family and therefore disrupt their lives. Okay? So we're really going to get to the point in this course, much more focused course. Okay? We're going to use the 3 important strengths that I used in the last Logitatia Avastas course, the Master's course. That's the Cheshtabala, the Uchabala, and the Digbala. Cheshtabala is how close a planet is to the Sun. When it's conjunct the Sun and combust, it is got 0 points of this Chesta strength, or Chestabala. Okay? When it's retrograde and exactly opposite the Sun, it has 60 points or full Chestabala. Now, Sun and Mercury never are never opposite the Sun. Their Chestabala is highest when they're conjunct the Sun and retrograde. So essentially, retrograde planets have more Chestabala, and that's a huge plus, okay? Then Uchabala is how close a planet is to exaltation. So we have debilitation here, exaltation here. Where is it at along that journey between exaltation and debilitation? The closer it is to exaltation, the better it is. And then we have Digbala, which is how close a planet is to a particular house. So for instance, Saturn has the Digbala, the highest strength, in the 7th house. It's the weakest in the 1st house. Right on your ascendant, it's got 0 points. Right on the 7th cusp, it's got 60 points. So I've covered those in other courses. I'll touch on them briefly. If you're not clear on what these are, check out the Jyotish Building Blocks course. I cover that information there. It's real simple though. I just covered it again. We'll use that later in the course to quantify just how much trouble a person's child, adult, or parent is in. Okay? Meaning how much work they have to do. Once we identify a problem, how much work is there to do with that planet. Okay? We're going to talk a lot about placements of planets and signs of the zodiac. Really quick, to the point, this is what it is. So this is going to have a lot of fun, great stuff about planets and the signs of the zodiac. And that's going to be founded largely on the results of the Logitalia Bustis. Okay? And then we're going to have the handwriting analysis as towards the end as another filter. All the horoscopes I've been looking at for a while now, I always ask people for the handwriting now. You know? And one of the wonderful things about doing it that way is with the handwriting, we can explain something in a way that's very graphic to them. Like a real picturesque, it's graphic, right? It's graphology, handwriting. We can say, see how you draw your T. And we can say, this means this, okay? So it's a way that people can really go, oh wow, I really am that way. And even people who don't believe in astrology, they will probably believe in handwriting when you look at their handwriting and say some cool stuff. In Europe, there's corporations, even corporations in America, that hire based on handwriting. In the United States, the FBI, the police, they use handwriting to help solve cases. You know, they'll have handwriting experts come, and the experts will say, it's a person like this. And they got 10 suspects, it gets narrowed down to 1. They focus on him, yep, it turns out he's the one. It's really remarkable what they've done with handwriting. It's highly respected in Europe. It's taught in universities, even I think in Germany especially. It's not as highly regarded in America. It's still very prominent in corporate America and very prominent in policing, police force, things like that. So people, if you know people aren't in New Age into astrology, they're often very inclined to like be happy to get a handwriting analysis. And in that, you'll be able to identify the similar patterns, be able to advise a person on them, and very importantly, if we change our handwriting, we're actually doing a sort of, let's call it a mudra, a hand thing, in order that can actually change how our brain is functioning and reprogram our behavior. So if we see someone that has a problem in their handwriting, we can tell them how to work on it and improve it. The other cool thing we can do, we can see a problem in our handwriting, and then we can go through some shift, say an outer planet or psychotherapy or meditate your butts off for 6 months, go live in an ashram, and then every once in a while check your handwriting and see what improvements have come. And you actually see that things that were indicative of problems will start shaping up in your handwriting. Okay? So I found it a very helpful tool, and again, this course is about helping you. It's not only about astrology. It's about being able to help the important people in your life and your clients any way you can. And if you don't have a birth time, who cares? You don't know when they're born, who cares? Just have them write you something out. Okay, so that's what we're going to cover in the course. Okay, now, this whole idea of parent, adult, child is really useful because a lot of therapists use this, a lot of relationship therapists use this in order to help understand how the two people who are having a problem, can't find happiness together, how they're communicating. If you have a parent and a child communicating, it's a very different experience, right? So if you see a parent of someone talk to their child, they're not talking to them on an equal-to-equal level, are they? Okay? And you have a child talking to the parent, it's not an equal-to-equal level. But many, many marriages are a parent talking to a child. Okay? That marriage can't be fulfilling. Because marriage, by definition, is a partnership of equals, where two people bring different things in, but they're equally valid. Okay? Now, sometimes you'll find a relationship with two children, two kids googling and goggling and playing in the park. Obviously, you can imagine the problems that couple is going to have in their lives, right? You bet. They're going to be stressing about money. Or there might be two kids fighting for the pacifier, or fighting for a lollipop. In either case, when you have two people who are children in a relationship, the relationship's not going to survive. They're going to have so many external problems, so many practical problems. Life is going to suck. And if you have two people who are talking together as parents together, then as long as they have something to parent, they can do well. But neither of them is going to be happy or fulfilling each other in that relationship, okay? And eventually, they'll start trying to parent each other and end up not wanting to be parented by the other, and they will have problems and separate. So therapists will identify how people are communicating, how they're relating, and then help shift that to a healthy relationship. A healthy relationship happens between adults, okay? Two adults can have a healthy relationship, okay? So this is a system that's widely accepted in psychological circles by therapists. But what we're going to do is we're going to pump it up one peg higher with astrology and a couple other really fun and useful ideas, okay? But take a few minutes to explain who these people are, okay? Now, one thing I'm going to add this, you can see here I got parent, adult, child, PAC. Well, I'm at another person B, okay? B is the Brahmin. Okay, now the Brahmin is the enlightened person. All of us have a part inside of us capable of enlightenment. Psychologists don't really focus on this part because they can't touch that. No one can touch that part, So it's not important in therapy, but it's very important to understand for this course, okay? And I think it's very important to understand in order to grasp your potential, and it's very important to understand where you're at. Are you in the Brahmin, the parent, the adult, or the child state? Let's say, for instance, we get a person who's truly in the child state, okay? But they think they're in a Brahmin state. You know what that person does? They become a guru who sexually molests their students. That's all it is. A guru who molests his students sexually is simply a child thinking he's a guru. He's confused. Wow. And we're going to learn how to understand all that. That's a little sample of the fun we're going to have here, right? Okay. So, the Brahmin is a part of us that's capable of enlightenment. We all carry this part. And we ignore it. Okay? And that's okay. Because that's a goal. We can't just say, I'm going to be a Brahmin. People do that. Children say, I'm going to be a Brahmin. And then they use their followers. Okay? Parents say, I'm going to be a Brahmin. And they create these rigid rules on their followers and tell their followers it's time to commit suicide, or they put such restrictions on them they can't even live their lives. And when their kids decide to have a girlfriend that's not a Jehovah's Witness, they don't ever talk to the kid again, etc., etc. Those kinds of dogmatic, rigid religions are promulgated by parents, a person who's in the parent state, who's pretending to be a Brahmin, pretending to be a man of God, a man of truth. Okay? So, we can't just say, I'm going to be this. Alright? I'm going to explain that more. Let's talk about parent. Let's talk about the child part, because we start out as children, right? The child part is the most beautiful part and potentially the most destructive part. Okay? It's the part that needs. Okay? Now, children are so cute and cuddly, And, you just want to give them affection, right? That's the sweet, adorable part of our child. We all have this adorable little child that people can't wait to hug and give to and take care of and love. Okay? It's a very important part of us. Without that part, we wouldn't want relationships. We want relationships to satisfy that part of us that wants to be connected and loved and with someone. That actually is our child part. Okay? That's a beautiful part of the child. Unfortunately, in the modern world, because of the family structure, most people's cute little adorable child suffers a huge trauma within the first 3 years of life. Okay? We're going to talk a lot about those types of traumas in the course. And those cause the child part to struggle in having healthy relationships. Okay? It's one of the primary factors that causes relationships to be unhealthy. It's also the primary factor that causes all kinds of psychotic behaviors and drug addictions, and really the problems that are the hardest to get away from if we fall into them. Okay? So, and that's not part of the child. That's not the child's fault. That's the fault of circumstances, society, and parental failure. The failure of the child's parents cause these traumas that damage to the child to the point that it can't just go have the natural, cuddly, loving life that it wants to have. Okay? The other part of the child is the part of the child that lets you know what it needs. That's the baby screaming, right? Baby's supposed to tell you what it needs. And the way it does it is it cries. Okay? Well, what about the people who never learn the healthy way of getting their needs met? Then they're going to be raving, angry, bomb-dropping people of some sort, depending on how extreme that anger is. Okay? So the child can be so cuddly and lovable, but yet so destructive if it's in a state of huge anger. Okay? So that's who the child is, basically. Now, contrary to that, on the other side of the spectrum is the parent over here. And the parent is, growing up, the parents are the ones who tell us things. But the parents within us are essentially the voices of authority. Throughout our life, especially when we're young, we get the voices of authority. But these are not just voices. Yes, they are what your mom say, they are what the minister says, they are what dad says is right to do and what's wrong to do. But it's also, more importantly, what that baby's observing. So if a baby's observing mom and dad doing certain things like smoking, and then the parents say don't smoke, you can bet that person's getting both messages. On one hand, don't smoke, on one hand, smoke. That person's going to be confused. If on one hand, dad says this is how you have to treat your wife, and on the other hand, dad treats the wife completely different, or aka mom completely differently, now there's mixed messages, there's confusion in that person. So, but basically every bit of authoritative information we take on in the first 5 years of our life forms this inner authority, or the inner parent. And that parent oftentimes is a very, that is the parent that whips at the slightest provocation, that has no leniency, that's really tough on you, and can cause you a lot of problems. So, but it's that inner authority. Just like we want good parents in life, our inner parental authority needs to be good. And it's the voice in their head that tells us what's right and wrong to do. I have to do this, I need to do this, I should do this. All that pressure of how you need to be, what's right and wrong, is the parent. Now, the parent part of you could align with who you really are, and it may not align with who you really are. Can you imagine what happens if the parent part doesn't align with what you're really here for and who you really are? Yeah, you're going to navigate down a road that has nothing to do with who you are until you train wreck one day. Okay? So, we need parents that recognize who we are and direct us towards our life that's meant for us. Unfortunately, everyone doesn't have internal parents of that type. Okay? We're going to study we're going to study the internal parent. See how good of a job is that internal parent doing in the context of who that person really is. So you can imagine if you've got this inner authority that's telling you have to live your life a certain way, yet it doesn't even apply to who you are, you can see why people get so much stress and jump off a bridge someday, because it's like, I can't escape this, I have to do it this way, yet nothing feels good, you know? So, parents' part can be very tough on us. It is the tough part. It's the part that's hard on us. Now, sometimes that's good. We need to have discipline. We need to have a moral structure. We have to believe in this is the right way to do things. So the parent part of us gives us this very valuable asset of the right things to do. And when those line up with who we really are, they're irreplaceable. Because without those guiding principles of a healthy internal parent, we would have to figure out everything ourselves. And that sucks. If we already have a lot of things figured out from an internal parent authority that developed healthily, like where we're watching and observing our parents, then great. That's going to save us years and years of mistakes. So the parent is basically there, it's the guiding force. But is it guiding us healthily, or is it guiding us in a pathological way? Those are the possibilities, okay? Now both of these parts, the parent and child, are very, very limited. I'm going to talk more about that in detail. They're very limited. They don't have options. The parent says, this is the way we do it. There's no other way. The child's like, I need that one. There's no other option. Okay? Neither of these have options. Okay? That's not life. Life is full of options, right? We live in a world of endless options. But the parent and child have no options. Which means they can't healthily navigate us through life. Okay? They can't learn. They can't figure things out. The parents are just these programs of should and shouldn'ts in your head. The child is just this, I need this feeling. And you can't tell the child, no, you don't need that feeling. You can't educate that. That's like telling a 2-month-old baby, you don't need breast milk. You just don't. And you don't need formula. You don't need that. Have a hamburger. You can't tell that to a child. They can't eat a hamburger. And they can't grasp it, even if they could understand it. You can't teach these two forces. Okay? They can't learn. And what I mean by that, they can't learn. The baby's not getting smarter. The parents aren't getting smarter. They're the way they are. Okay? Now, the adult part is the most important part of us in a way. Okay? In the sense of changing our lives and making growth. It's the adult that changes our life. It's the adult that makes our life work better. It's the adult that grows. It's the adult that helps our child part feel better. It's the adult that re-educates our parents to be useful to us instead of limiting to us. Okay, like who wants a limiting parent, right? Nobody. If in life you had a limiting parent and you were able to say, but Dad, let me explain this to you. And Dad would be like, okay, try it. That's wonderful. That's the sign of a healthy adult. And we need to actually do that within ourselves. So adult is ultimately the one who manages the parent part, so it's not a restrictive, limiting factor in our life. And the adult is the part that takes care of and loves the child part so that the child is satisfied instead of angry. Okay? Because if you don't feed the baby gets mad and it cries and keeps everyone up. And we don't want to be a baby going through life screaming our heads off because we're not getting our needs met. Okay? Nor do we want to be a person with so many limited thoughts and so many limited ideas. We limit our lives and we limit everyone else's lives that we're around. Neither of those are good options. It's the adult that manages those two parts into a healthy, cohesive human being. Okay? Neither the parent, the adult, or the child can say, I'm going to be a Brahmin. They don't get to just say, I'm a Brahmin. They can't. Parent part often will say, I'm a Brahmin. I'm enlightened. I'm spiritual. The child part will say that too. The adult part will never say that. The adult part is just growing. And one day, as a result of that growth, it will achieve the potential of the Brahman, the enlightenment. Okay? But the adult part does it as a matter of fact, as a matter of growth. They don't just say, I'm a Brahmin. They would never do that. Okay? So when a girl says, I am God, they're stuck in parent or child. A true girl is an adult that grew until they realized the enlightenment, the Brahman. It's that simple. Only parents and child claim to be gods, claim to be enlightened. Okay? These four parts are very important to understand. Okay? And the last thing I want to talk to, so we cover the importance of this, and then the next course we're going to get into more of the, expand all this, get into the nitty-gritty. This is the introduction. Each of us has these four parts. Which part is running the show? Okay? That's the defining question. That's the critical thing. The part that's running the show determines everything about your life. It's what restricts your happiness or opens you up to great happiness. Okay? And I just looked at my watch. The video is getting too long. So I'm going to stop this video, and that's going to be the next video, which is the qualities of a Brahmin-ruled person, a parent-ruled person, an adult-ruled person, or a child-ruled person. Those are very important to understand. Even without astrology, once you understand this, you'll be able to examine people and say, oh my gosh, my mom's a child. I've been raised by a child. Yes, many of us were raised by children. Can you fathom that? When the person who told you all the things of how you're supposed to be was a child, was a 2-year-old? That happens, okay? So, understanding this can free you up from a lot of the untruths that you've been surrounded by, because it puts everything into perspective. If you think a guru is real and you find out he's a child, all right, it puts everything into perspective, doesn't it? More importantly, with our parents, we understand where they're working from. It's really freeing. Meaning, it really frees us up to be ourselves when any limiting factors are seen in the right light. And through understanding how these different people behave, how a Brahmin, parent, or adult, or child person behaves, is the beginning to becoming a free person, which means an adult. Only an adult has freedom. The Brahmin has freedom, but the Brahmin is an enlightened adult. Okay? It's not like the adult disappears. The Brahmin is an enlightened adult. The parent will never be enlightened. The child will never be enlightened. But they'll get something else. Okay? That they'll get everything they need once the adult becomes enlightened. And once we talk about exaltations and debilitations, you'll understand what I mean by that. But I have to stop now because the video is getting long.